Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. I don't know how long this video will be, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. So get a snack, get a drink, sit back, and enjoy. Even if you're not into animated shows or movies or even dolls, you have heard of Barbie. This fashion icon has done it all. She has been an astronaut, a doctor, a teacher, and an actress. And Barbie has created 30 plus movies, and with the range of movies, a dedicated fan base arises. And of course, people drop out of that franchise as they have gotten older, but others have not. And with the older fan, it's known that the older Barbie movies are the best because of the fantasy and magic elements. For some fans, the films around the 2010s are the best, and for the newer and more recent fans, the newer movies are the best. Barbie movies. And I'm not here to tell you whether it's better or not, but I want to give you reasonings for why these different movies could be considered good. And to do that, I have to break down the Barbie movies down to the different eras and go in depth why each movies are good in their own right. Era 1, the magical setting or the princess era. This era was from 2001 to 2009. Any movies around this time had Barbie in a fairy tale setting. The first in this lineup is Barbie and the Nutcracker. This movie was a take on the Nutcracker story, and it was the first movie to establish the trend of Barbie being a princess or fairy and going on adventures in a fantasy setting. Magic was heavily present in these movies, and romance was a common theme. Barbie at the end always ended up being with the prince or some other type of guy, even when the romance between the characters didn't really make any sense. It's interesting to note a lot of the movie's love interest had brown hair, because if you kept up with the doll franchise, you know around this time Barbie and Ken broke up, and she was dating Blaine, who was a brunette, opposed to Ken, who was a blonde. In addition to these movies, some were adaptations. Barbie had told their own version of the Nutcracker, Rapunzel, Swan Lake, and the Tall Dancing Princesses, and some were definitely better than others. Many of the older fans who are older than me, and I'm 18, keep in mind, will say this era is the best era of the Barbie movies. Putting the bad art style animation aside, I can see this charm for these movies. I'm a huge lover for fantasy settings. Something that's not in our modern world interests me a lot. And this era gives us amazing movies such as Barbie and the Nutcracker, Barbie and the Diamond Castle, Barbie Diaries, but the best movie from this era is definitely Barbie and the Princess and the Pauper. Hands down, this take on the Prince and the Pauper story is literally a great movie, and any fan will tell you so. The soundtrack of this movie is top notch, and I always found myself rewatching this movie all the time. This movie was also the start of Barbie movies introducing more than one main lead. Of course, this was to sell more dolls for the movie, but to me, it let me relate to another character other than Barbie, because as good as these movies are, she can be really bland sometimes. No real character trait, a blank surface, but that's understandable in a way because the audience is supposed to envision themselves as these characters. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a princess and marry a prince just like Barbie? I do agree the element of magic and fantasy really elevates these movies, but take them away, the movies could also be carbon copies of each other. There's a princess, she goes on an adventure and marries a prince. Besides the Barbie Diaries, which is like the Barbie version of Mean Girls, or Barbie and the Christmas Carol, or Barbie and the Three Musketeers, you can see the same elements within the Barbie movies of these times. But because of nostalgia, you can bypass that and watch these movies over and over and over again with no problem. Era 2. Magically modern. I don't know what to call this era, but the movies made during its time was from 2010 to 2014. There's an improvement from the animation and art style. Barbie's taking on the modern world, though magic still exists. The first in this lineup is Barbie and a Mermaid Tale, and this is what Jen and I believe was the first Barbie movie we ever watched. I remember finding this movie on demand back on cable when we were little kids. Mermaid Tale saw Barbie in the modern world as a surfer, but the magical element was she's also a mermaid. Then the next movie after that was Barbie and the Fashion Fairy Tale, which I think was also the second Barbie movie Jen and I actually watched. And in this movie, Barbie is an actress, modern, and she goes to Paris to visit her aunt. Very modern. But fairies exist in this one too. Magic element. And this was the new trend. Make it modern, but still add some magical elements to it. Then, just like Barbie Diaries being an outlier in the first era, Barbie A Perfect Christmas was the outlier here. This was the first movie of Barbie with her sisters. However, after this movie, we go back to the trend again with Barbie and the Mermaid Tail. Then another outlier with Barbie and the pink shoes. Barbie goes back to the first era and has Barbie as a dancing princess ballerina, and magic was very heavy in this movie. But after this, we get three more outliers. Barbie and her sister in a ponytail, which is the second Barbie and her sister movie. Then Barbie the Pearl Princess and Barbie and the Secret Door. These movies completely drop the modern setting and goes back to the first era. Kind of. Now, these movies don't have the same vibe as the first era movies, but Mattel just kind of backtracks from them doing modern setting with the hints of magic and went back to completely telling princess stories. And it definitely kind of fell flat. It's like Mattel was having an identity crisis. Do we do fantasy magic movies or modern and realistic ones? Mattel will soon answer this question in the next era, but before we move on to that, I would say some good movies from this era were Barbie and the Mermaid Tail, Barbie and the Pink Shoes, and can I just say Keep on Dancing is a masterpiece of a song, and you can fight me on that. Next is Barbie, the Princess and the Pop Star, and yes, I know it's not as good as the Princess and the Pauper, and it's just a clone of it, but it's one of the better clones of it, because Mattel surely does do this trope, this theme of switching life in more movies to come. But my favorite movie from this era actually has to be Barbie Princess Charm School. I swear I wanted to be Blair so bad. Coming from a struggling home to going to a school for princesses. And then later finding out that you were the long princess of the kingdom. Though this movie's narrative is unrealistic, how could I not hope for that when the number one banger on Top of the World played? I swear, that song motivated me to do anything as a kid. Though this era does not have the nostalgic charm of the first era, I don't like when older fans just dismiss these set of movies. Barbie animation has improved from the doll-like skin to something 10 times better, though sometimes the animation misses its mark. It's overall good. The storytelling is still good. Barbie goes from the same bland character to kind of an actual character with traits in the background. She's much more realistic and relatable to the young audience that are watching these movies, and also the songs these eras are amazing, and I don't want to hear anything otherwise. Era 3, Barbie and her sister. Now, this era is from 2015 to present. This is the most recent era, and I will say this era will last longer than any of the previous eras because Mattel has a good marketing strategy going on here, and they're not changing it at all. We know that Mattel's slogan is "You can do anything." This lets kids envision themselves in these different roles and allow them to go into any careers of their choosings. They can look at someone they idolize and see themselves being like her because she's your everyday normal girl compared to the princess she was in the old movies. Along with Barbie becoming much more realistic than ever, some might say it's up to the point of her being boring, and I actually agree with that. I mean, the movies have gone so realistic that Barbie has went from this ballerina princess fairy figure to just an ordinary older sister. Though these movies' realistic nature is relatable, none of the stories actually interest me. But hey, that's just me looking at it in a bad light. Now, let's analyze this movie in a good light. On a good light, I do see Barbie going from this unattainable, unrealistic, sometimes boring figure to a more realistic, relatable person. Now, I don't like the stories and adventures told in these new movies, like I said. I can care less about the adventures with the puppies or the dolphins, but what I do care about is how Barbie has a personality. She's so much more real than she has ever been. Mattel took notice of how great Barbie in the Dream House was, showing Barbie in a modern setting and showcasing her life through a TV show, and ran with it. In 2015, we got the Barbie vlogs on the Barbie YouTube channel, and though it was very unsettling at first to see Barbie acting like a vlogger and a teenager, this new approach wasn't bad. This Barbie vlogger spun a new Barbie TV show where we see more characters that we can relate to, characters we can see ourselves in. I mean, we got people of different color and different body types. It can't get better than that. And I like how in these movies we can focus less on romance. Now, look, I love a good romantic movie like The Next Person, but seeing a movie where Barbie gets to have a love interest just because the movie was a fairy tale and Barbie was a princess gets boring and repetitive. Era 2 kind of actually started to do this. In these movies, romance was a thing, but in some of the movies, it wasn't just shoved in your face. It wasn't the main focus, and it wasn't as obvious too. With the new sister movies, Barbie and Ken may or may not be in a relationship, and their scenes together are cute, whether they show it in the movies or the show, but it's not the focus of it at all. It focuses on family adventure. This is what Mattel is going to focus on in the future. However, they might sprinkle some extra and different stuff like they did at the start of the era with Barbie and Princess Power. And God, that animation is so bad. I just can't look at that movie. It's horrible. Or Barbie Video Game Hero. I honestly don't expect too much of these outliers because we have already gotten so many movies surrounded with this new style of Barbie that getting something like we did with Barbie Starlight Adventure seems light years away. But one can honestly remain hopeful. Now, this era, of course, is not my favorite, but I can appreciate it a lot. My favorite movies from this era are movies that actually don't have to do with Barbie and her sister. Movies that are good in this era are Barbie Spy Squad, Barbie Starlight Adventures. Guys. This is a sci-fi Barbie movie. Let me repeat, sci-fi Barbie. Barbie in space. Let that sink in. The animation is gorgeous in this movie. The characters are so enjoyable to watch. This is truly a masterpiece. But, however, my number one movie in this era is actually, and some of y'all are going to hate me for saying this, Barbie Rock and Royals. Yes, this is another remake of the Princess and the Pauper story. But, guys, I don't know. This is just so enjoyable to me. This movie gives me kind of like Disney live action musical vibes, you know? There's a camp, the campers sing and dance at random. It's amazing. The animation is good, the story was okay, and the songs are just, oh god, I love the songs. This isn't the best Barbie movie ever, or honestly, it's not the best Barbie movie even in this era. That award goes to Starlight Adventures, but I gotta be biased here because I do tend to rewatch this movie more times than I can count. I don't know what it is, but I really like it for some reason. But anyways, I like the realistic, modern approach that Mattel is going for in this era, but I do hope Mattel gives us more movies outside of the Barbie and the sisters and just kind of get original and out there with it. You know, they had Video Game Heroes, completely out there. Video games, guys. You know, I want to see more of that. So I hope Mattel gives us more of that to come. Barbie has gone through 3 major eras and have gone through many of the same themes. And I just want to list a couple of them here. Theme 1. Barbie as a dancing ballerina princess character. We saw this in Era 1 and 2. The Barbie movies were built on this theme. Era 1 had the Nutcracker, Swan Lake, the 12 Dancing Princesses, Thumbelina, and more. Era 2 gave us Barbie in the Pink Shoes. Another theme is the adaptation. Barbie doesn't do these anymore, but it's understandable why they did that in the beginning. Their first ever movie was The Nutcracker, and it grossed $150 million in total sales. And of course, they would continue this trend for a while, but all the adaptations can primarily be found only in Era 1. The third and biggest theme is Barbie just as a princess. Not dancing, not a ballerina, not a fairy, just a princess. Take away the ballerina aspect and you get movies like Barbie and the Island Princess, Barbie and the Secret Door, Barbie Princess Charm School, and with their newest current film even, Barbie Princess Adventure, which shows characters from the Barbie show into the film. Another theme is just fairy and mermaid. I put them together, okay? We have Barbie Fairytopia, Barbie Mariposa, Barbie A Fashion Fairy Tale, and Barbie and the Secret Door. And of course, we have more. Theme 5 is the outliers. Now, I have been saying outliers throughout this video a lot. Outliers to me are just movies that don't really fall within what was going on with the Barbie movies during that time. Era 1 had the Barbie Diaries, and though the animation was horrendous, I actually liked this movie a lot. The Barbie Diaries were not made by the same company that usually makes the Barbie movies, so that is why the animation is so different. This movie is actually surprisingly good, though very chaotic. This was definitely Mattel's attempt at Mean Girls because there is so much comparisons, and I would love to make a video on this movie, so let me know if you want one. But anyways, the Barbie Diaries was just released in the middle of these other movies that show Barbie in this fantasy setting and was a lot more mature than its predecessors, and I really enjoyed that. And there were some outliers with Barbie in the Pink Shoes. This movie is something that is definitely should have been made during the first era, since it follows the same structure. There's a fantasy setting, Barbie is telling a story of some kind, they dance a lot, and magic is present. And with Barbie in the Pink Shoes and the fantasy movies of Era 1, typically started off with Barbie talking to a younger character girl, Chelsea, Kelly, whoever, and explain to them some type of story to help fix their problem. Other outliers in this era were honestly any of the Barbie and the sister movies during the times, because they went against Barbie being in a modern world, but magic still having a presence, because in those movies, magic wasn't a thing. For Era 3, though, I called it Barbie and her sisters. There is actually more non-Barbie sister movies within it. However, with the release of the newest Barbie movie, Barbie, Chelsea, and the Lost Birthday, featuring characters from the Barbie TV show, the Barbie sister movies to non-Barbie sister movies is actually even now. But since our last non-Barbie sister movie was in 2017, and we got two Barbie and her sister movies since, and we are also in 2021 now, so it's safe to say that the Barbie sister movies will continue to rise. So if that is the case, then the outliers in this era is Barbie in Princess and Powers, Barbie in Rock and Royals, Barbie Spy Squad, Barbie Starlight Adventures, and Barbie Video Game Hero. The next theme I have is, I guess, remakes. Barbie uses the same traits that work for the older movies and apply to the new ones. Princess and magic, of course, is common, but the old switching lives is present too. We had Barbie as the Princess and the Pauper as our first movie, and it's a terrific film. Then the first copy of that was Barbie, the Princess and the Pop Star, then Barbie in Rock and Royals, and the most recent one is Barbie Princess Adventures. Many fans don't even want to think about these other films that copied Princess and the Pauper, and I agree, and I do see how each film they attempt like this theme with, the quality of the story gets less and less interesting. But I have to say, Princess and the Pop Star and Rock and Rolls have some good banger songs, and their story is pretty good. Not amazing, but it's okay. And I refuse to think that these movies are the worst Barbie movies out there, because some fans really think that after 2009, these other movies should just like burn in hell. And for some, I might agree, but for others, I just simply don't. In conclusion, now, everything is up to your own opinion, up to your own interpretation, and everything is very subjective. Each era has some good and bad movies, some interesting, and then some are boring. I'm a Barbie fan who can see the good and bad in each quote-unquote era and respect what Mattel as a company are doing. Let's think of these movies in a timeline. As a child, we loved to read and watch fairy tale stories. We loved the fantasy and magic element. We got to see a whole new world that was different from our own, and because of this nostalgia, we see these movies as the greatest of all time. And that's true. They are. But as time goes on, we are out in the modern world, and these next few movies are showing you the magic within the modern world. Then lastly, we just fully abandon the magic and embrace the wonders of the modern world. We embrace friendship and family and creativity. Of course, the movies were gonna change as Mattel changed their marketing strategy, as Mattel changed their brand, as Mattel introduces new things into the Barbie franchise, as multiple skin colors, hair textures, body types. We weren't gonna get the Barbie fairy tale movies again, and honestly, that is okay. But Barbie, or quote-unquote Mattel, needs to still get better at telling their recent stories, because they can get really boring sometimes. Somewhere in the beginning of quarantine, I started to watch the new Barbie show on Netflix, and I quite enjoyed it. And this is coming from a fan who loves the older movies. I love Barbie Life in the Dream House, and I was hesitant for this new show. But this new show is not it's not entirely bad. I haven't exactly continued it in months, or I guess now it's been a year, and I haven't watched any movies relating to the show, the Princess Adventure one and the Barbie Chelsea Lost Birthday one, but what I've seen so far has actually been good. So to end, I don't want to answer what movies are good. You can choose so in the comments below. What era you prefer, or between what years and movies did you particularly enjoy, and let's discuss. But let's not hate on the newer movies, because these movies are obviously for a different type of audience than what the old movies were for. Let's just appreciate we can go back to the old movies and rewatch Barbie as a princess and jam out to the old song, because they are so good and still hold up today. Whew! That was a buttload of information I just said. But before I end this video, I just want to quickly list the pros and cons of each era in a much clearer way if you couldn't understand anything I was saying before. Era 1's pros: fantasy fairy tale setting, the adaptation, the songs, the romance. Era 1's con: the animation art style. There were some small moments about the animation that I actually didn't like, but that's just honestly me nitpicking because it wasn't like the entire film. The style of the characters, I like looking back, and I think it's good because of nostalgia. But if I look at it as like a new fan or in a different lens, I wouldn't really like how Barbie looked in these movies. Another con is the romance. I know I listed romance as a pro, but for some of the movies, I just did not like the romance element at all. I just didn't like any, like the pairing of the characters. It didn't make sense to me. Think of Barbie in a Diamond Castle. Arrow 2's pros. The modern setting, the songs, the animation, the style of characters, brighter colors, and the original stories being told. Era 2's con. Some of their princess stories were boring, they didn't have Era 1's charm, and the last couple of movies in this era were just bad. Era 3's pros. Showing Barbie sisters, Barbie has a personality, amazing animation, originality, and keeping it simple with the story, but that's just me saying for like the Barbie sister movies. Era 3's cons. The storytelling, boring adventures, the songs are good, but not as good as the older ones, and eventually, or at least for me, you see one Barbie sister movie and you just kind of see them all, and they get repetitive, they get boring, and I just don't like them. Now, I'm cutting this video off here because my original plan was to just explain the eras and tell you the good and bad of each era. Explain what each era of the movies offer and just show you some positives of the movies after 2009 because they get so much hate for no reason. Then I was planning on reviewing each of the movies from the Nutcracker to the most recent, the Barbie Chelsea movie. I'll even review the original Life in the Dreamhouse show, which is a masterpiece, and the new Barbie Dreamhouse show, Barbie Vlogs, and any other show and shorts Barbie is in. But this video is getting long, and I don't know if I should still have a review. I'm not sure, so let me know if you want to see that. Before we end, I want to give another note here. There's going to be a Barbie live action movie, and I know people really hate live action adaptation of childhood favorite properties, but I haven't really seen anyone talk about this, so I really haven't seen anyone express hate on this. The movie was supposed to be in 2019, then it was pushed for a 2020 release, but because of the pandemic, it was postponed again. So who knows if and when we were getting this movie. But Margot Robbie is supposed to play Barbie, and I honestly can't wait because I love Margot Robbie in like the DC movies as Harley Quinn, and just seeing that complete switch to good girl, oh my god, I'm gonna love it so much. And I also cannot wait to see more information that's gonna come out. So I don't think we actually need a live action movie, but let's just see how all of this plays out. But besides all of that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're all doing okay during these troubling times. Let us know if you have any suggestions for future videos. Thank you guys so much for supporting our channel. It means a lot. I hope you all are having an amazing day, and Jen and I will see you in the next video. Bye, and remember to stay a kid at heart. See you guys later.